Okay, we left off in verse 20. We're going to pick up verse 20. So we're going to write the first emperor was Julius Caesar. And then after that we come to verse 20, which is Augustus Caesar. This is the raiser of taxes. That's Obama. Taxes, the raiser of taxes. Slash Obama. Alright. And then in verse 21 it says, the raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So what is said of Augustus Caesar?
Died of a natural death.
He would die of a natural death. Alright. Verse 21 says, and in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by what? By flatteries. So Augustus Caesar gets sick, and he has to give his kingdom to one of his two sons, but the two of his sons that his wife has is not for him. They're his adopted sons. He has one called Tiberius and the other one is Agrippa. Now Tiberius is the vile person, so what Augustus did, Augustus says, you cannot wear the purple robe of Rome because you are too vile. I'm going to give it to Agrippa. So Agrippa is the first king. And that's why we find King Agrippa in the prophecies. But as Agrippa comes up, he is what? He dies. And then the vile person who is Tiberius comes in. Tiberius, the vile person, comes in and takes the kingdom. And he says, and in his state shall stand up a vile person, who shall obtain the kingdom, shall come in and take the kingdom peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Alright? That is verse 21. Verse 21. And then we go to verse 22. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and he shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. Alright? So in verse 22, you find 4 BC, where the prince of the covenant come in. That is 4 BC. 4 BC. 4 BC in verse 22. We're at 4 BC. Alright? I want to say that from verse 22 onwards, we're going to be repeating. Even the book of Daniel is repeating what happened in verse 16 with Cleopatra and Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar and what is taken, and Octavia. We didn't include Octavia when we were going to include Octavia right now. But it's kind of repeating. So in verse 22 we have 4 BC, the birth of Christ.
Well, wasn't that 2 BC? Why 4 BC?
4 BC because this is the Prince of the Covenant in verse 22. This is Christ. Prince of the Covenant comes right here. Covenant.
Was 4 BC he was born?
Yeah. Prince of the Covenant.
That was 2 BC.
It could have been 2 BC.
Because in 27 AD he was baptized at the age of
27
13.
AD he was baptized.
So the age he baptized at the age of 13.
Yeah,
It
baptized at
was
the age of
27
13.
AD.
27 AD.
27.
Yeah, AD.
So when you add the 3 plus 1, remember you're not going to know 0 here. So it was 4 BC. All that we had to do was this. I know. I never told in Adventism when I was there either. We had to calculate that. The 27 AD that Adventism teaches is correct. But notice it. If Christ was born in 1 BC or 2 BC, when you
to that.
Right?
You don't add 0 year to that because history had no 0 year. The only time you're going to add 0 year, you're going to add 0 year when you're dealing with prophecies that expand from here to here, and you have to convert it by doing division and multiplication. But right here is a counting prophecy. You have 27 AD, and you go to 1. From 1 to here is 27. Then there is no 0 year, so you go to 1. So this is going to be 28. This is 1. There's no 0 year here. And this is going to be 28. And then 2, 29. And this would be 2. And then 330. This would be 3 BC. Which would bring you to 3 BC. But we need to remember that in 27 AD, it comes to the time, we know 27 AD. 27 AD is the time when he was baptized. Christ was baptized here. And Christ being baptized here, it was the time when John the Baptist was on the scene. And John the Baptist came to the scene during the time of I don't remember.
What, the king?
Was it Passover when John the Baptist was on the scene?
When he says, there goes the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world.
Yeah. There's a way to prove at the time when Christ was baptized.
It was the Passover.
What time during the year? I don't think it was
Passover.
Passover. I don't remember this right now. I could get it afterwards. But the time would extend. This would be 3.5. It would lead you into 4 BC. That's how I put the year 4 BC here.
I think you might put 3.5 years of ministry. So if you got a Passover, then it would have been Tabernacles 6 months before.
Tabernacle, yeah.
That's probably what they did.
Yeah.
Because it was Passover in 3.5 years. It would be
Yeah.
6 months
Yeah,
before.
I know
so it'd be the fall.
Yeah.
It'd be the fall. Baptism been in the fall
Yeah.
because of 3.5 years of ministry.
3.5 years of ministry.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 BC is
4 BC. So that is the reason why we have the year 4 BC there. So Christ was born in 4 BC, and then he was that is when we come to the Prince of the Covenant right here in verse 22. It says, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and he shall be broken also the Prince of the Covenant. Alright? And then it goes and it says, verse 23 start to repeat. So verse 23 goes backward. When you come to verse 23, I'm going to draw a different line, verse 23. Verse 23 says, and after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. After the league made with him, this is the league of the Jews and the Romans. So you have a league right here with the Jews and the Romans in the year 161, and
that BC.
And this is the year 161 BC. So verse 23 takes you all the way back to the time period when almost the Battle of Actium was occurring. But even before the Battle of Actium, the Jews made league with the Romans when the Jews wanted to free themselves from Syria or the Grecian kingdom. So they made a league with the Romans in 161. That is what verse 23 says, and the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. So right here the Romans are going to use the Jews to do its conquering. So you need to understand that the Romans are conquering The Jews are with them conquering. Ask yourself a question. Why do Rothschild today hold the Vatican treasury? Who are the Rothschild?
Jews.
Who are the Rothschild? Anybody know who are the Rothschild?
Richest people in the world.
Richest people in the world. Who are they? Jews. They are Jews. Why do they hold the Vatican treasury? Why are they the guardian of the Vatican treasury? What communion have Jews with Rome? They made a league from 4 BC.
From 161, over and 4 BC.
Not from 161 BC, sorry. Alright? So you need to understand that Rome started to conquer here, they started to persecute people, doing a whole lot of things, but all the bad things that Rome was doing, the Jews were with them. You could ask yourself the same question. Why did Jews have to league up with the Romans to crucify Christ?
Yeah, same thing.
And how did the Romans build the Jewish temple? You could ask yourself all these questions. They repaired the Jewish temple.
Herod the Hesmenian was a Hesmenian. He wasn't a Jew.
And then you could ask yourself another question. Where does this history repeat? Because then White says everything in Daniel's repeat.
What Roman built the temple?
Which Roman?
None. There's no Roman that built the
Herod.
temple.
Herod was not a Jew.
Nope. What Roman built the temple?
The temple for the Pharisees was let me see.
It was Herod.
Yeah, it was. They built the temple.
Herod.
The temple was built.
Yeah, but he did a whole lot of repair and extension to it when I read in the
Oh
history.
yes, the temple was built, but he repaired the temple.
And he did a lot of addition to it. That's why people liked him, but he was a Hesmenian. He was never a Jew. Right?
They
In other words,
in 70 AD when they destroyed the temple, they didn't want to destroy the temple. They wanted the Jews to come out of the temple so that they could have a battle out in the field. Why they didn't want to destroy the temple was because Rome had invested a lot of money in getting the temple
underneath the time of Herod.
that beautiful. Yeah.
Solomon built it, and when you look at it, Herod added a whole big addition to it. The history tells me that it's right in one of those Bibles. That's what Herod did. That's why he loved the people, and the people loved him. And when he came out, that's why the Bible says that Herod turned worms, because what happened is that he so helped the Jews that when he came out and he did like this, they said he was wearing a silver garment and all the light was glaring, and he was accepting homage as a god from the Jews, and that's why God allowed the angel to come and turn him into worms. He was liked by the Jews because he helped the Jews.
So well, what is most important is to ask yourself when this is going to repeat. When the League and the Jews are going to repeat in history.
Big time at the Sunday line, I'm saying for sure.
That is verse 23. Verse 24. He shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Alright. Right here, this is verse 24. In verse 24, this is 31. 31 is the Battle of Actium, right? This is the Battle of Actium. It says, even for a time is 360 years. So 331 BC plus 360 gives you the year 330, right? 330 or 300 and gives you the year 330, 331. Which one? 330, right? Anyway, 330 AD, and in 330 AD what do you have there? You have somebody called Constantine. What is Constantine doing right here? This is the Battle of Actium. When they win the Battle of Actium, that is when it begins. And you can see it's when they win the Battle of Actium. Because in verse 24, it says, he shall enter peaceably upon the fattest places of the province. Rome was conquering. He says, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil the riches. Yes, he shall forecast his devices against his strongholds, even for a time. When Rome conquered in the Battle of Actium in 31, conquered Egypt in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, then Rome started to consolidate the province of Egypt and all that Egypt. But what Rome did not put them under excessive tribute and put them under, they have to pay this and pay that. What Rome did, Rome actually helped them. Rome invented a system for them to pay him tribute just by a little bit of taxes, but eventually he would reimburse them the taxes that they got. So both the government of whoever come under the rulership of Rome, they would benefit rather than be termed slave. They would have to pay a tax, but at the same time they would receive a reimbursement, and at the same time they would have a protection from the armies of Rome. So Rome fixed it that people were under him, but they did not consider themselves, as slave or really in bondage or really oppressed.
And they were also allowed to practice their own religion.
Yeah, they were allowed to practice their own civil authority by Rome. So that is in verse 24. He shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and the spoil. Scatter among them the prey and the spoil means giving back the prey and the spoil to them. Alright? He says, and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. That time is prophetic there. That time goes to Constantine. I just wanted you to see that, even for a time.
Why after you come to verse 20, I see you're pointing back? I don't
Yes,
understand.
I'm pointing back. I'm pointing back. Anybody understand why I'm pointing back?
Verse 20. Then shall stand up his estate a riser of taxes, which is Augustus, in the glory of the kingdom. But
yes, you came in late. But I wanted to see if people slip what I said as well.
he shall be
why am
destroyed
I
neither
pointing
by
back?
anger nor by battle. Alright, so
From here,
what did you do
from here I am pointing back from verse 20. I'm pointing back
because you're going back to Diocletian.
because we established that from verse 20 onwards it started to repeat the same history again, even in Daniel 11. It repeats. Everything here is being repeated again. But actually it doesn't repeat from verse 20. Actually it repeats from it goes to 4 BC in verse 22. It starts to repeat from verse 23. When it brings you to the League of the Jews. The League of the Jews was in 161 BC. And it's going to take you to the Battle of Actium, and then you're going to see Cleopatra again in this whole history here. Because this is just the time, this prophetic time here, that brings you to 30 AD. Points you backward, but bring you forward to 30 AD, to the time of Constantine. And there's a reason why they take you to 30 AD. He wants you to see what Rome will do. When Rome forms a league, when Rome conquers, he wants you to see the real intentions of Rome. So it brings you to Constantine. the real intentions of Rome is for you to have a day of worship. So it brings you to Constantine. Points you backwards and bring you forward with that time there. Verse 25, and he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. This is the battle of Actium. This is in verse 25, but still 31 Actium. And if you look at what it says there, he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. And both these kings' heart shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. Then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploit and return to his own land. Alright, verse 26 and 27. Verse 26 and 27 is the battle of Actium, and verse 26 and 27 is the history that they're talking lies at one table. Alright, we said that Cleopatra was for Augustus. We mentioned the history of Augustus Caesar going to Egypt, following who? Pompey, and eventually, after Pompey is dead, he meets up with Cleopatra. Alright. Augustus Caesar, you have Augustus Caesar, but you have he's not the only general of Rome. You had Julius Caesar as well, which was the general of Rome. You have another guy, I don't remember his name, Libelius or something like that. But you have along with him Mark Antony. Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar are brother-in-law because Mark Antony married Augustus Caesar's sister, who is Octavia. But when Augustus had left Cleopatra and Ptolemy reigning together, Mark Antony was sent to Egypt by Rome, and when Mark Antony was sent there, he started to mingle with Cleopatra. And then when Augustus Caesar came, he met Mark Antony, and that was the Great War. That was a war between Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar and Cleopatra, where Augustus Caesar is going to win as well, and then Cleopatra is going to die in that war. And that still is the Battle of Actium in 31 AD. So eventually only Augustus Caesar is going to be alive after that. Whole thing is culminating between Cleopatra and Mark Antony and Octavia. But these two are brother-in-law because of Octavia. Because he has to leave his wife. Well, actually, he is actually committing adultery with Cleopatra, having Octavia being his wife. But when it says they talk lies at one table, is because both of them are having an affair with Cleopatra, but they come on one table and they dissimulate like nothing is happening, but eventually it breaks out into war. Alright, so that is the history. Verse 28, that goes from verse 25 to verse 27. Verse 28 will bring us to, then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploit and return to his own land. Alright, this is when he goes and he Let me just read it right from here for clarity. Verse 28, then shall he return into his own land with great riches, his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploit and return to his own land. To returning from foreign conquest here are here brought to view the first after the events narrated in verse 26 and 27. The second after this power had indignation against the holy covenant and had performed exploit. The first was fulfilled in the return of Caesar after his expedition against Egypt and Antony. He returned to Rome with abundant honor and riches. At this time, such vast riches were brought to Rome from Egypt on the reducing of that country and the return of Octavianus Caesar and his army from thence, that the value of money fell one half, and the prices of provision and all vendible wares was double thereon. Caesar celebrated his victories in a 3 days triumph, a triumph which Cleopatra herself would have graced as one of the royal captives, had she not artfully caused herself to be bitten by the fatal asp. Okay? So Cleopatra died bitten by a what? By an asp, a serpent. The next great enterprise of the Romans after the overthrow of Egypt was the expedition against Judea, the capture and destruction of Jerusalem. The Holy Covenant is doubtless the covenant which God has maintained. Alright, so after that they went and they captured Judea. Alright, Jerusalem fell in AD 70 as an honor to himself. The Roman commander had determined to save the temple, but the Lord had said that there should not remain one stone upon another. So this verse 28, takes you way to when they overthrew the temple. Verse 28 takes you to 70 AD. So this was 31, but verse 28 takes you to 70 AD. 70 AD, when they overthrew the temple. Alright?
Verse what? 28?
Verse 28. 70 AD. At the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter, for the ships of Chittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return, and having the nation against the holy covenant. Alright, let me just go to verse 29 and verse 30. Skip over and go. 29. At the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south. At the time appointed is probably the prophetic time of verse 24, which has been previously mentioned. It closed as already shown in AD 330. I have 330. At which time this power was to return and come against toward the south. Okay, this verse 29 is just repeating again. It's repeating what happened in 31 AD. That brings you to 330 AD. There are about 2 verses here that brings you to 330 AD, and verse 21 bring you to 330 AD again. At which time this power was to return and come again toward the south, but not as the former occasion when it went to Egypt, nor as the latter when it went to Judea. Those were expeditions which resulted in conquest and glory. This one led to demoralization and ruin. the removal of this seat of empire to Constantinople was the signal for the downfall of the Empire of Rome. Then lost its prestige. The Western Division was exposed to the incursion of the foreign enemies. On the death of Constantine, the Roman Empire was divided into three parts between his three sons, Constantius, Constantine II, and Constans. Constantine II and Constans quarreled, and Constans, being victor, gained the supremacy of the whole West. He was soon slain by one of his commanders, who in turn was shortly after defeated by surviving emperor, and in despair ended his own days, AD 353. The barbarians of the north now began their incursions and extended their conquest till the imperial power of the west expired in AD 476. Alright, so this verse 28 takes you to 70 AD, but verse 29 will point you here, takes you here, but it will take you all the way to the time when Rome is divided between east and what?
West.
And west. That is where Constantine's empire is divided. And it is divided east and west, but it's given to three of his sons. One of them is Constantius, Constantine II, and Constans. So Rome is divided into two, but these two is given into Constantius, Constans, and Constantine II. Constantine II. So it just have two divisions, but it's given into three people. This is all the way in 353. This is around 353. So from 70, verse 29 is taking you all the way to 353. This is AD now. And when you come to verse 30, let me skip down to verse 30, because verse 30 here is important.
East and west. Looks like, from modern day, that they look like the United States being in the west, Rome and the papers being in the east. And
Verse 30, the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. The prophet narrative still has reference to the power which has been the subject of the prophecy from the 16th verse, namely Rome. What were the ships of Chittim that came against this power, and when was the movement made? What country or power is meant by Chittim? Okay. In Isaiah 23:1, it gives you the ships of Chittim. From the land of Kittim it is revealed to them. The news of the destruction of Tyre by Nebuchadnezzar is to be brought to them from Kittim, the island of the coast of the Mediterranean. For the Tyrians, says Jerome on verse 6, when they saw they had no other means of escape, fled in their ships and took refuge in Carthage and in the island of Ionian and the Aegean seas. So also Jokre and the same place. Quito gives the same locality to Chittim or Kittim. Alright? That land is Carthage. So when you're talking about Kittim, you're talking about Carthage.
that's North Africa.
So right here in verse 30,
Hannibal.
Kittim
So Hannibal shows up.
is Carthage. So Carthage, and if you understand this, this is Revelation 8. This is the first what? The first trumpet of Revelation 8. 8, first trumpet. The ships of Kittim that came against him is Revelation 8, first trumpet. Alright? So let me see. Carthage. Okay. Actually, the ships of Kittim are all the barbarian tribes. Not the first trumpet, but the 4 trumpets. First 4 trumpets. The 4 trumpets. Barbarian tribes. I didn't know the barbarian tribe came out of Greece, but they came out of Greece.
Say that again.
Didn't know the barbarian tribe came out of Greece. More south, but between Greece and South Egypt.
What happened is that the reason why the barbarian tribes came out of the south was because by the time Hannibal was destroyed, right? Which are the what again? Hannibal the what? They were what? The Barcas against the Scorpios.
Yeah.
Right? What happened is that by that time Hannibal was destroyed. The Romans, they grew up, all the young boys, because remember, you had to be an elite. Sorry about that. You had to be in the middle class, basically upper class, to join the Roman army. You know? So by the time Rome army underneath Scorpio was sent to fight against Hannibal, Hannibal destroyed a lot of their fathers, and a lone lot of Lee Picnic left like this. So by the time they grew up, and then a part of the Senate, and you know, they remember the lead time, you know, they have to go in and they garden and mommy and know daddy, and I'm a lot of them. They decided, you know what, but I'm a Carthage, may cause this. So they gone and burned down Carthage, totally destroyed. And then underneath Rome, it came up back. And when it came up back, by the time we reach, by the time the Huns they come, the Huns they start to drive all of these barbarian tribes down through Spain area, from France through to Spain. By the time they reach Spain, you had 2 Roman generals. I forgot what they there. You remember the name? Sure. When we talk about the Huns.
Oh, Atheist.
And who was the emperor?
Valentinian.
By the time Valentinian come, all right, these 2 generals they fight against each other. So what happened is that, or they set up each other. So bottom line is that one was in the area of Carthage, and he asked the barbarian tribe to come and fight with him. The fight never did go off, and what happened then is that the barbarians, they got upset, and afterwards they start to ransack Carthage, which is North Africa, and then after that they moved back up into Rome and through Sicily. That is called they were called the Gauls. I don't know if that's the one you talk about. Yeah, which are the Vandals. Right, they come from through Gaul, Spain, North Africa, then they gone up back through Rome. That was in the time of Carthage. So Rome fight with Carthage 2 times. They fought with Carthage underneath what you call the Punic Wars, underneath Hannibal, and then afterwards they ransacked Carthage. It was rebuilt by Rome, and then afterwards the Gauls, they came, which are the Vandals, and they took it, and afterwards they marched back through Rome.
428 to 460. 428 to 468 AD. So this is in verse 30, verse 31. It says, verse 31, and arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So when was that? When was the abomination that maketh desolate set up?
538.
538. 538. Alright? So
that
from
is-
538 you're going to come to 1798.
Yep, that's the issue that we're familiar with.
And then you're gonna all the way in verse 31 you come to 538 and then you have the verse 16 here. We already know this history in Daniel.
Yeah, that's
In
the
the book of
only issue
Daniel.
we were taught in Adventism.
That's the only thing we were taught in Adventism.
Yay! Finally reached.
Yeah, we were only taught this in Seventh-day Adventism. The whole
Yay!
book
Finally
of Daniel,
reached.
everything we haven't been through.
Yay! Finally
We've
reached.
reached verse 31, and after in 1798, if you see 538 from verse 32, you're inside this history to verse 40.
Yeah.
From verse 32 to verse 40, you're inside the 1260. So let's read it. And then we can come to verse 40 and end there. We're just going to read. Come to verse 40 and end there.
It says, And the arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily, which is pagan Rome. Alright. And they shall place an abomination that maketh desolate. In other words, pagan Rome is gone, and now the papacy is set up.
Yeah.
And
Now-
such do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but his people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploit. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by the flame, and by captivity, and by spoil many days. So this is the talk about who? Probably who? Diocletian? People like Nero.
Yeah, people like Nero, all of these people who started.
No, when they shall fall, they shall be helping with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And some of them understanding shall fall to try them, and to purge them, and to make them white. This sound like Revelation. In the churches.
Yeah.
Even the time of
Even
the
to
end.
the time of the end.
Because it is yet for an appointed time. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall make marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor any God. For he shall magnify himself above all. Talking about the papacy, right? They're not married, they're into celibacy and all of these things, right? Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor desire women. Right? They're not allowed to get married, I guess.
Yeah.
But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his father knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most stronghold with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And
Right there. Okay, we're gonna end there. We reach verse 40. There's still many things to see in this verse, because what happened is that it's the verse from 32 to 39 that repeats more directly for us in verse 40 to 45. But from verse 42 to 39 is pretty straightforward. We know many things during the time of the Dark Ages as Seventh-day Adventists.
Well, then sees them, and then sees Luther, Wycliffe, Huss, Jerome,
All of that.
the Reformation,
History of the Reformation.
right? The French
do
Revolution.
understand.
You know,
It was the Reformation that were the people that were purged and were made white.
Sardis.
Yeah, and they were the ones that were helping with a little help.
The helping with a little help couldn't be America. I'm just guessing.
Well, they were in the wilderness. You could put America as the wilderness.
Yep.
Yeah. Helping with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flat reeds. It says they were purged. It says, and some of them of understanding shall fall to try them. So they're tried, they are purged, and they are made white. All right. So this is a history that we ought to know. Okay, brethren. We're gonna end right here in Daniel 11, and we're gonna go for lunch, and we're gonna rest until about, that would be, lunch would be 1 by 1. Brother Lucas should have been here for the next study.